Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to episode 3 of What's in the Bag. I'm Emma.
I'm Mike, and this is my tournament bag.
This is still your tournament bag. All right, so episode 1, we talked about dice. Episode 2, we talked about measuring. Episode 3, we're talking about scoring.
Yeah, now, if you've been to a tournament ever, or you're looking at going to a tournament, you have to know how you're going to be scoring your games. There's 2 parts to scoring that you need to keep track of at the table, and then there's a third digital method that a lot of tournaments use these days. So we're going to start with templates and tokens. Now, in this little bag, again, it's just a generic little dice bag, but this is a Warhammer 40,000 one from the Indomitus pre-order. As you can see, I've got a wealth of little tokens and templates in here. Now, what I've got in here...
a couple of different options, really.
Yeah, so the first
You wouldn't actually take all of these.
No, these come with me to every tournament. So the first thing I've got are these little... Now, these are actually sold as wound trackers. I actually like to keep hold of these for tracking command points. They can be used for obviously big monsters. They spin from 1 to 10. Wound trackers is what they... it lets you avoid the mix-up with dice like we talked about in episode 1. But I've recently found them really useful for tracking each player's command points. Because they're kind of a visual thing. Again, you're not leaving dice to get lost and confused. Most players start the game somewhere between sort of 5 and 10 command points, and if you need more, then there's 5.
You can always add 2.
There's 5 tokens here. Yeah. So they're one that I've started using for that purpose more than anything else. The second are 2 sets of 40mm objectives. Now, these are the standard size for Games Workshop, and we're very fortunate that when we produced our objective secured ones, which are these ones, they're just a 40mm MDF. These are numbered 1 to 6. Now, the 1 to 6 numbering is a throwback to prior editions. However, I found having them numbered a nice safety net in case the missions change in the future. So 6 of those, 40mm, really straightforward. If you want to be swish, these are the ones that were pre-order from the Indomitus range. Again, 40mm. Cool looking objective markers.
And you got 2 options there. You've got the Warhammer on one side and you've got the 1 to 6 on the other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, again, much like the tape measures we talked about in the last episode, if someone forgets some, a friend of mine comes and says, "Hey Mike, have you got spare objectives? Here you go. I've already got a set straight away." I do have a lot of armies that have custom objective markers on 40mm bases. I will bring those for sort of armies on parade type things, but I don't find them practical on the table these days.
Yeah, no, that's something that I've been noticing as well. Partly because it just adds extra complications, really.
Well, I've seen some fantastic custom objective markers, and what it can end up being is confused with terrain. So I would...
Well, I think depending on what it is, some of the times it can be confused with terrain or can be confused with actual models.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
If you've got some custom markers which look amazing, but it's actually a similar model to what you're using on the table, well, am I aiming at that? Well, you can, but it's an objective marker, so I don't recommend it.
One of my older armies, my Emperor's Children army that was built in 4th edition as a heresy-themed army, the relic objective marker I made for that is actually a dying space marine.
Yeah.
He's on a 40mm base, and he's got bullet holes, and he's bleeding, and all the rest of it, but he's still painted the same way as the army.
Really cool for armies on parade.
Not so practical on the table.
And definitely, as we said in episode 1 around the dice, definitely extra points when you are looking for the hobby points for those hobby-centric events, like our First Blood event, or anything where you are going to get extra hobby points for your painting score. But yeah, for practicality of use...
I definitely stick to either 40mm bases if you've got no other option, or these sets of objective markers are really cheap most of the time.
We sell ours for $4.
Yeah, whether you want just very cheap MDF ones, you can buy places like Hammerhead Games and some of the other retailers around the world sell these sort of 40mm disc acrylic ones.
Poker chips are another thing that we've seen.
Yeah, we've done that before.
Although they are incredibly expensive, so...
You
certainly wouldn't be my first choice.
You'd also have to make sure they were the right size, because with the current edition of Warhammer 40,000, 40mm is really important. Because they are 40mm objectives measured from the edge.
Yeah.
The other way you can go, which we'll put some photos on the screen now for you, are neoprene objective markers. Now, these ones are slowly becoming more and more popular in the community for Warhammer 40,000. They are a neoprene mat that incorporates the 40mm of an objective alongside the 3-inch measurement around the whole objective, so that if you're actually on that mat, you are within range of the objective. And that removes a lot of a lot of the issues around measuring. Am I not in? How close do I need to be? It removes the ambiguity, and I think those are really great. Ours, for the Objective Secure theme ones, aren't quite with us yet, but as soon as they are available, they'll be on the website. If you want to get hold of any of those from us, but they're kind of the creme de la creme of objective markers these days, and we're seeing more and more of them. Yeah. You could even go and print them. One of our players as a regular of our tournaments has printed them on cardboard, printed them on paper, cut them on cardboard, and they're just 6, 7 and a bit inches across with the 40, numbered 1 to 6, and he puts them on the table. And because you can't put them up above ground floors and those sorts of things anymore, there's none of those complications. So as long as you measure it correctly and you cut it correctly, that's a great way of making sure you get those templates so that there's no ambiguity. The advantage of neoprene, obviously, though, is it doesn't move on the table. And that's probably the biggest risk with these, is that they can get knocked around. The neoprene ones tend to have that rubber backing that stops them moving. So these would be your go-to if you're on a budget. These would be, I really want some cool themed ones that match my army. And then the neoprene is the creme de la creme. Yeah. But as far as objectives go, they're the way to go. Now, the other thing I wanted to cover very quickly for scoring is how we keep track of our scores. Now, there's 2 ways that I take with me to tournaments. The first is something like this. Again, from Hammerhead Games. This is a game tracker. Now, this was actually produced in late 7th edition or early 8th edition. As you can see, it's well loved. It's a bit worse for wear. Yeah. So this actually tracks turns 1 to 6.
Now, saying that this is well used, well loved, and a bit worse for wear, the only thing that's worse for wear is the paints coming off the studs there.
Yeah. The actual acrylic's intact.
The acrylic's completely fine. I can't stand the squeak.
It has been.
The numbers on it are still nice and easy to read, nice and clear to read, and this has been used for how many years now?
That, I think, came with me to LVO in 2017, so it's...
Okay, don't turn anything as well.
It's got a couple of years up its sleeve.
Nails on a chalkboard.
So something like this is really useful, because you can keep track of turns, you keep track of command points, if you want to go down that way, and then a running score. Now... I was
just like, what's Pi score? Oh, player 1
player
score.
1 and player 2.
Yeah. Now, I got it now.
In the interest of transparency, that's what I actually use it for these days. I don't use it for the scoring. And the reason I don't use it for the scoring is the way Warhammer 40,000 is scored a little bit differently now. Yeah. So, because we're allowed to show it with this...
Doesn't have any numbers on it yet.
This is the tournament scoring sheet from the Grand Tournament Book 2020. You are allowed to photocopy this for your own use.
So this is out of the back of...
The Grand Tournament Chapter Approved book. Yep, that's the one.
So it's just in the back of this book here. And it does say on it, can be reproduced for personal use.
Yep.
So players we can't, as tournament organisers,
we can't
photocopy these and supply them. But as a tournament attendee or event attendee, I'm certainly... Yep. And so this is in for when Mike goes to events.
So I will, if I know I'm playing 5 rounds, I'll probably bring 6. I always like to have 1 extra just in case. On the weekend of my last tournament, I actually had 5 in the box for 3 games. So.
And how many people came up and borrowed them?
No, I wouldn't share them out because I only brought just enough for me.
Now, with this, one of the things that we haven't pulled out is a pen.
Yes.
So I do highly recommend taking 2 pens with you as well.
Yes.
Now that's going to make it a lot easier for you to fill it out rather than trying to write with your fingernail.
The other version I've seen of this, which has been really successful in recent tournaments, is laminating one of these, blowing it to A4, laminating it, and then bringing a whiteboard marker. Yeah. And that way you can fill it in, wipe it at the end of each game, and you only bring 1 sheet with you. That's been really useful. It also, because it's laminated, if you need to write stuff on the plain side and the back, you can. So
you just have to be a bit careful when you turn it over, particularly if you're putting it on a neoprene mat, that if you move it, you haven't actually smudged it and taken everything off it. Yeah. That's the only thing to think about if you're going to do that.
So if you're not sure a tournament's going to supply scorecards, bringing a few of these, it's not hard to do. It'll cost you a couple of cents at a local library, I suspect, to photocopy them.
I think it's probably about 20 cents to photocopy it, and then, what is it, $1 at Officeworks to get it laminated.
Yeah. And if you're not up for laminating, then photocopying them and cutting them is, next to no work. Yeah. So
it's next to no work because I do it for him.
So combining this for keeping track of command points in the turn, and then this for the scoring, that kind of covers me. Yeah. The fact that you score the primary slightly differently in 9th edition means that the turn side of this is almost not needed. But I do find the visual reminder, because that obviously sits quite nicely on the table. It's not little, you can see it.
Yeah, and I probably prefer this for the command points to these as well.
Yes.
Just because it just feels a bit more.
Well, it's much easier.
It's easier to move and see, and
well, it also means that your opponent can just pick it up and look at what's going on,
Yeah.
as opposed to having to look for one of these tiny little discs that's...
And you can go to more than 10 for command points.
Yeah,
on
those
these
command
as
points do
well,
go up
so,
to 99, technically.
Yeah. Which is very unlikely you're going to get an army with 99 command points. But it is, it is likely that you could get more than 10, and because these only go up to... Because they only go up to 9, you're
Well, they
then
actually
having
go to 10.
Oh.
They actually go to 10.
Oh, wow, yeah, I see that. I thought it might go down to 0.
Hammerhead games do a wound tracker that actually goes to 99, as in it's got 2 dials,
yeah.
exactly like the tournament tracker tablet. It's just about twice, 2 of those side by side, basically.
What I love about these is they don't squeak when you turn them.
No.
No nails on a chalkboard.
I actually probably need to order a few more of those for some of my armies because they're great wound trackers.
Do we not have them for sale in there?
This is actually the last set. So these are great. I've got 5 characters in my Harlequin army. There's 5 of them here, so that works pretty well. But unfortunately, all of my bikes have got multiple wounds. My vehicles have got multiple wounds. And as we move further into 9th edition for 40k, we know that all the Space Marines are going to 2 wounds a model, and it's going to become more and more important to keep track of how many wounds certain things have. So the wound track, while the wound trackers aren't necessarily part of scoring, they are at the same time, because a lot of the time you need to know how much you killed to score. So I would strongly suggest if you have lots of models that are multiple wounds, more than 2 wounds, I would have a handful of these up your sleeve so that you can not be putting dice down and being as transparent with the way you play as possible. And that's the scoring component of my tournament bag.
Fantastic.